Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is metaphor and how metaphor can be a really useful tool to integrate the lessons and changes and actually even forward the changes that we're looking to create in our lives. So we get to explore that in a little bit. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together and vigorously rub your hands together. Feel all that tension, friction, temperature, all that sensation, and allow all those feelings, the tickling, the tingling when you stop, all of it to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, 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 welcome. Good morning, Rosalind, and happy Friday to everybody. It's so good to have you all here with us this morning. And today we're talking about metaphor. And this came out of a session that I did with one of my clients. It was so awesome. It was so awesome because this person has, and I don't think that they're at all alone. I think that this was the case for me for most of my life, that the primary experience and response was fear. That was sort of the underlying or the thing that underpinned everything in my life was this fear. Like it felt like it was ever present, and it was pretty extreme, and it colored everything. And so in our exploration, we discovered that fear for them was really the foundation of everything. And we came up with this metaphor that ended up, I think, being really, really, really powerful. And when we talk about change and transformation, we talk about how we're running different programs, and what we recognized in this situation was we weren't just going to change a bunch of programs and go chasing down all these different programs to modify. Instead, we were changing out the whole operating system. And it turned out to be, so far anyway, it's turned out to be a really great metaphor because I checked in and they said, well, I'm still processing, which is also a computer term, which is interesting, right? But they said, I think it's still downloading. And that was awesome because when we think about updating programs and updating an operating system, the program has to download, right? And then after it downloads, it installs, and then sometimes there are updates, and then there's usually a reboot before the updates, so that it's this whole process. And that process is reliant upon your internet connection and the energy source being plugged in. And so it was this really rich metaphor that we could apply to this process that is that they're undergoing in their recalibration. And I'm wondering if there are other metaphors that you have utilized, experienced in your growth and transformation that have proved useful to you in moving through and in integrating the information that you're working on integrating. Like, how does it occur for you? What kinds of metaphors do you use in your life that help to forward you? I'm trying to think at the moment. I'm not thinking of any others, but well, like an open book, that's a metaphor. It's like an open book. Are you an open book? What other metaphors do we have in terms of growth and change? Well, we often talk about a lotus opening and unfolding. We talk about sometimes trees and the bursting forth from a seed and then that pattern of growth. And we can, in fact, I remember not too long ago, I was talking to somebody using the metaphor of a tree for different phases of growth and different phases of life, and energy, that the energy of the seedling is a different energy from the tree that is sprouting new buds on long established branches. So different energies that we can access and feel in a different way through metaphor. And actually, the power of metaphor is that it goes beyond words. It goes into an experiential realm. So it's able to connect all these different levels of awareness in something that is powerfully descriptive. So they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. That's really the power of metaphor. And it also engages different parts of our brain, different parts of our conceptual capability. So, engaging right and left brain. So that's another power of metaphor, is that it's able to reach more deeply into our consciousness, into our awareness. I think that that's really a big part of the power in the work that I do with the core connection work, is that it resides in this sort of imaginal realm where we're creating imagery, representative imagery, that has much deeper dimensionality than trying to talk about things in a logical, linear fashion, because our emotions and the complex of our perceptions don't exist in a linear context. And so reaching into metaphor, we're able to capture an essence of something that words won't necessarily achieve. Rosalind says, switching to Android from iPhone, the operating system is too different. I would rather think of evolution as a river migrating to the ocean. Sometimes growth is stagnant, swelling at the seams and beautiful. Sometimes it's stagnant, sometimes swelling at the seams and beautiful. So the river's a beautiful metaphor for evolution, and things don't always go that way. Sometimes they go the way of switching to Android from iPhone, for example, and there's a whole new operating system, and the acclimating to that new system is sometimes rocky, sometimes uncomfortable, making new adjustments, discovering new associations. Sometimes that is the way that we evolve. I was talking the other day about anti-fragile, still trying to wrap my head around this whole thing, but where we're talking about traumatic or disruptive events becoming evolutionary catalysts. And so when we look at metaphor, it's a really useful way to gain inroad into understanding things that our minds are having a hard time grappling with. And metaphor allows us to transcend the limitations of logic. Lots of people want to believe that life is logical and that we can figure it out through logic, and we can understand it more deeply through logic. But the thing is, life isn't logical. And we're trying to impose logic on living systems, and then get frustrated or assert or righteous in our assertion that something doesn't that's not logical, that doesn't comply with logic. But who says that logic is the ruling what would be the word, container, context, rule? Who's to say that logic rules? It doesn't. We try to apply logic to impose some kind of structure for understanding on the world, but it doesn't really work that way. Logic is another word for our trying to understand, to put things in a systematic format. And the thing is that when you get into living systems and the complexities of the interrelationship of forces and sentience and all these myriad of factors, it's not just complicated, it's complex. And then logic doesn't necessarily prevail. I don't think it's logical to understand that, quantum physics, where things go from one level of energy to an entirely different level of energy. Just because we understand or we believe we understand some of the mechanisms of it, it doesn't mean it's logical, right? It's not following a linear progression. So, that's an interesting thing to play with, particularly if you end up being engaged in argument or heated conversation with somebody who's talking about logic. That logic is a tool, not a rule. Anyway, I don't know how we got to that point, but I wanted to say, if you are putting comments in the chat and I'm not responding, it's because I don't see the comments. So if you want to engage in this conversation, and you are so welcomed and invited to do so, please go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or YouTube channel, and you can put your comments in there and be part of the conversation, which would be awesome. So I love the river metaphor, Rosalind. We talk about the ebbs and flows of emotion, right? So that's another metaphor that allows us to recognize the tides, the coming in and out of the tides. A beautiful story is the giving tree, which is using the life cycle of a tree as a beautiful metaphor for the phases of life and generosity and connection. What other kinds of stories? I know there are so many stories that we are raised with that are metaphors. At the moment, I'm not coming up with any, but as we chat together, maybe something more will come up. What other kinds of metaphors do you find awareness of? One is, how about the sweetness of life? You know, what are we talking about there? It's talking about the deliciousness. It's a metaphor. It's a food metaphor, right? Poetry really is capitalizing on the power of metaphor. Oh, Jenny, hi, good morning, welcome. So Jenny, thank you for asking. I so appreciate it. Jenny's asking, what was the movie last night? Every week on Thursdays, we do a Sustainability Now movie night where we share on Zoom films that are relevant to sustainability, and we share our interviews. And last night we showed the movie that is called The Rights of Nature, a Global Movement. And the person who wrote and directed the film is named Hal Krimmel, and he joined us in person. And it's a beautiful film. I encourage you to go check it out. The Rights of Nature. It's a new movement. And this is actually an interesting alignment with our conversation about metaphor, because we talk about Mother Earth. And in a way, that's a metaphor, and in a way, it's just plain true. We talk about Earth as or Gaia as a living entity with all the living creatures on it and all the resources of it. And it was very, very powerful, beautiful film. So I invite you to check it out. Rosalind says, I like the metaphor of a rescue animal. How to approach trauma. How would you acclimate a rescue dog with patience, love, and compassion until it feels safe? That's brilliant, Rosalind. Really brilliant. Yeah, I often use a metaphor of a cornered animal, to be looking at how someone who is stuck in defensiveness and stuck in fear might respond and in a dangerous way, so that you want to be cautious in approaching, for instance. So Jenny says, OMG, have you watched The Dimming? It's a movie on YouTube. No, Jenny, what is it about? I haven't heard of that one, The Dimming. But this rights of nature conversation is a really, really, really powerful shift of paradigm that we are moving into, and it seems that at what seems like an accelerated pace, which is awesome. And there are over 100 countries that have granted personhood to elements of nature, so to glaciers and mountains and rivers. And by granting personhood to nature, then nature has rights of ownership and rights of legal rights. And it isn't just a metaphor. It's fascinating to be looking at this, because from a Western vantage point, we think of that conversation in the context of metaphor, right? Like that Mother Earth, that's metaphorical. But in a number of traditional cultures, that's not a metaphor. That's the reality. And earth and nature is alive as a living entity with consciousness. And the relationship to nature and to life itself and the interconnectedness in other cultures is profoundly different from the Western relationship with nature and the natural world. And the Maori people, for example, and I'm fascinated by this, identify themselves when they introduce themselves in the context of their place. So essentially saying, I don't want to bastardize this, so, but essentially saying, I'm born of this particular mountain or this particular river, this particular place. So Jenny says, the guy that created the dimming was trying to save the bullfrogs. It's about geoengineering that's been going on for 60 years, and it's killing Mother Earth and everything living on it. So, whether there's conscious geoengineering or what I tend to think is that we have a very short-sighted view of the impact of the changes that we try to make, either serving our own personal objectives or business objectives or short-sighted community objectives, development objectives, rather than a global cabal that is planning how these changes are being implemented. I tend, like with sustainability now, the reason that one of the founding reasons that we do it is to bring a different perspective and to bring the awareness of solutions and potentials and possibilities that exist and that are emerging. And the reason for that being, Jenny says it was a real eye-opener. I'll bet it was. The reason for this, though, with sustainability now is to bring awareness to what's going on and what the challenges are, but also to bring forward the I don't want to just use solutions, because solutions, again, challenges and solutions, it's kind of, based in this whole old paradigm of problem solution, find the problem and fix it, rather than look at what the systems are that are operating and look at how to vitalize them, regenerate them, expand them into being more vital. Anyway, so we focus on information that is moving us into the future in a way that is hopeful, not in denial, but is hopeful. And because there's so much doom and gloom, doesn't mean we turn away from what's there, because it's important to recognize what's there, what are the dynamics. And then the question is, and now what? Now that I'm aware of that, what do I notice about how this is part of a system, and what are the systemic dynamics that are shaping that, and what might be possible from that new awareness. I think it's very, very easy, looking at the state of our world and the state of so many developments in our world, to become overwhelmed and resigned. And we need exactly the opposite. And lots and lots and lots of activists face burnout all the time because sometimes it just seems so completely hopeless. And Jenny says those chemtrails are clouds releasing aluminum and other chemicals to create and control the weather. So I've learned in the past, I was really aware DARPA was doing all kinds of weather control stuff. And, as we recognize that climate change is impacting our weather cycles, this is way beyond the chemtrail thing. The fire, flood, and drought cycle, and the whole weather cycle, extreme weather and global warming. There's a lot going on. It's not simple. It is a complex system, and there are all different points of intervention. One of the most hopeful things, and I know I've shared this before, and one of the most hopeful things that I've encountered is an organization called Water Stories that are, the organization is educating people about how, Jenny says that's what's creating all the climate issues. I'm going to disagree, Jenny. I think that that's a profound oversimplification. There's a lot going on around climate, and one of the biggest things, one of the biggest interventions that I've seen for shifting the whole climate crisis actually is by restoring the water cycle. And what that means is restoring the aquifers, restoring the water that is stored under the ground, and using, in order to do that, it means implementing different land management policies and different farming techniques where we restore the soil so that it can act as the natural sponge that it's meant to. Because when the earth, if you think about water as the blood of the earth, here's a metaphor, then what's happening is that blood is being leached and depleted in so many ways and diverted. And if we can strengthen the system by restoring that blood, by please, Jenny, you will love this. Go to Water Stories, become part of the community. It's free. And then you'll have access to see some of these videos about the water cycle and how weather and water in the earth makes all of the systems work in harmony. Or disharmony. So Jenny says that's not the intentions of the government bad guys. Fortunately, the government bad guys, whoever they may be, are not the only ones with the power to influence what's happening on the planet. There are many, many, many people that are doing amazing things, and we just don't hear about that. So be alert to getting pigeonholed in your thinking to the darkness, because there's lots of darkness, not to deny that, but there is lots and lots of light as well. And what we focus on multiplies. So just suggesting, please go, if you want to see something real and powerfully hopeful, please go check out Water Stories. Anyway, with that, I'm going to wrap it up for this morning and for this week. It's always such a powerful experience for me to be with you these mornings, and I'm so deeply grateful to you. I will check out the dimming. I absolutely will. I'm not in denial about that, Jenny, and I really appreciate your sharing it. In fact, I'm writing it down so I remember. And I am aware around chemtrails and that's not new information to me. But I absolutely will check it out. And we get to balance our perspectives, right? The reason that I started Sustainability Now was because every time I thought about what we were doing to the planet, it broke my heart. And I couldn't live with that level of despair. And I needed to look and needed to find people that were doing positive things and movements that were happening that are powerful. This rights of nature thing is gaining momentum around the world, and it's shifting our way of being in relationship to nature. And there's a lot of consciousness shifting right now in a very profound way, in relation to in respect to our relationship with our natural world. Thank heaven. Hopefully it'll happen quickly enough. Jenny says the water what? I again lost my thoughts before I wrote it down. Water Stories. It's a website. Go to Water Stories. I think it's .com. waterstories.com. Really powerful, wonderful, hopeful information. And that's not to say there aren't obstacles. We get to change a lot of laws. We get to change laws around water rights. That's actually something that we were talking about last night with this rights of nature thing. People have ownership of the water, which is insane, right? Water is part of the commons. Water is here for all humans. And we have bought and sold water and mineral rights like they can be personally owned. And I think it's a radical concept, but I think we get to be revisiting this whole notion of water rights and what that looks like. Because people have drained rivers and lakes to be able to divert water to other places or to bottles that they then sell. Bottled water. So anyway, we get to look at all this stuff. So Jenny says I'm in Colorado. Well, there's lots of water stuff going on in Colorado, that's for sure, all around the world. And I think as we become more aware of the rights of nature and as we become more assertive of our right to clean water, clean air, and a healthful environment and a stable climate, then the rule of law is going to have to change. And yeah. So anyway, with that, I wish you all an incredibly wonderful weekend. Make magic and enjoy. And I'm Mira Rubin here on Enlightened World Network. This is the Core Connection. I go live each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel. And I invite you to check out the other wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. And until next time, Jenny says, peace, love, and light. That's well said, Jenny. Peace, love, and light to you all. And I hope to see you again